Hello everybody. So recently I played a Skarner game in Ranked where I personally feel like I solo carried the game, and this is pretty rare right now in League of Legends because I feel like over time League has become more and more team based and solo carrying a game has become more and more hard, but somehow I did it in this game. I felt like everybody on my team was trash, most people on the enemy team were trash, and I had to drag everyone through the mud to get this hard fought win. This game happened about a week ago in Gold 3. Since then, I've climbed all the way to Plat 3 in about 30 or 40 games, frequently getting 27 or 28 LPO win and skipping some divisions. A lot of this was only on Skarner and using a lot of the stuff that I used in this game specifically to carry. So I thought I'd take the time to show you guys in depth throughout this whole replay what I did so you can apply all these skills to your games and hopefully you can climb with Skarner or another jungle champion and get up to Plat 3 or even higher if you're a better player than I am. So to start off the game, I know that Echo Jungle's clear is very weak from playing him myself, and I know that Skarner's clear is obviously very strong because of his spires, and his counter jungling potential is very strong because of the spires in the enemy jungle. So for this game, I know that Echo's either going to be super low when he gets to his red buff, or he's not going to be there at all because he needs to back from being low from his first 3 camps, which ends up happening. So after my first 3 camps, I decided to go into his jungle, get the Spire for some vision, and go and risk invading the enemy red buff, even though the Fizz was pretty close nearby, because I knew that I had the power to kill both of them, or at least get away safely with my stun. Once Echo uses Q on the Raptor camps, I decide to walk up to him to see what his response would be, and he starts running away, which tells me that Fizz isn't really in the position to give adequate backup to the Echo. And also, the Raptors are pretty low from Echo's Q, so I decide to land an E on the Raptors and possibly Echo to see if I could either clear the Raptor camp super fast or potentially get the stun debuff on Echo, proc it, and then even potentially kill him with my flash, which is what I end up doing. Luckily, this went the best way it could have possibly went, but also at the same time, this wasn't a huge risk because I had other options if it didn't work out, like for example, stealing his jungle camp, or if stuff got really bad, I could run away and also stun the Fizz. By the way, I would have still had the stun up because every time you proc the stun, it reduces the cooldown of the E by 1.5 seconds. I would have procced a bunch of stuns on the Raptor camp, so I would have had E back up to stun Fizz and get out. So this was a pretty low risk situation, and luckily it turned out to be great for me with first blood on Echo, and it really started my snowball. Now while that skirmish was going on between me and Echo, we have the first example of my teammates just making a bunch of mistakes throughout the game, which causes me to have to carry them. Right here we have Swain just getting in melee range of Fizz. Admittedly, he did stop Fizz from going on me, but also at the same time, I could have handled Fizz in that situation as I demonstrated previously. He wastes flash and just dies. I guess he just doesn't know what Swain does, or he doesn't know what Fizz does. Either way, it's just pretty stupid. So after the first blood on Echo, I decide to take a couple camps back and start pathing towards bot lane to get a potential dragon and start snowballing bot lane. While I do this, I see this pretty insane fight happen on bot lane that gets both bot lane duos low, and I see this as a perfect opportunity to gank. Admittedly, I get a little greedy and go for the Scuttle Crab as well because I see that they're hanging around in bot lane and I don't think that they will just back off. Normally they should back off, and normally I should go down there right away to stop them, but it ended up working in my favor anyways because it just so happened that a ward died right before I ganked, which I was actually extremely lucky. I go down there, and for some reason the Varus is just playing really poorly. His positioning is really weird. I honestly feel like I'm playing against bronze players at this point, and I get an easy double kill on Varus and Malphite. Now the problem with this fight is the Vayne. The Vayne is very low from the previous skirmish. She should have just backed. During this fight where I was getting the kill, she was walking back and forth. I think she was trying to attempt to get an auto attack in to get an assist real quick, which is kind of smart for her to do, but she just ends up like dancing back and forth, really unsure and indecisive about what she's gonna do. Tries to get an auto on Malphite, he flashes and kills her. This was just really dumb of her, and admittedly, I think she was the worst teammate in the entire game and really dragged this whole thing down, but this is just the first example of her doing something so stupid she just should have backed. So after I'm done with bot lane, I noticed two things. Fizz is extremely pushed in, making it an easy gank, and Echo is ganking top for whatever reason, even though he just saw me bot lane and he sees that Fizz is pushed in. Logically, he should be there for a counter gank potential, but alas, he isn't there, so I'm able to abuse this Fizz mid lane. Unfortunately, I have to go and heal up with the honey fruit because Fizz has his ultimate and I don't want to be bursted down by him. While I do this, Swain gets tower dive. Not much he can do there. Not going to blame him too hard. I get the stun and another easy kill. And at this point, I know I'm going to be fed, so I decide to go the carry Skarner build this game. And in my opinion, there are three primary builds for Skarner right now. There's a carry Skarner build, a standard solo queue Skarner build, and a high elo / pro play Skarner build. Now, the carry Skarner build that I'm going to be going this game has absolutely no MR or no armor in it, so it's more focused on just being a damage soak and a damage dealer for the team, kind of in the style of a bruiser, like how an Aurelia would be top lane, or a Riven, or a Jax, and it has a lot of those type of items in it. Now, the build that most of you should be going, if you're just being average on Skarner and not really popping off, is just Cinderhawk, Triforce, and then a bunch of tank items. A preferable one to get is Deadman's Plate. Some other ones you can get depending on the enemy comp is Adaptive Helm, Randuin's Omen, Spirit Visage. The reason you want this build for solo queue, just standard in general, is because on Skarner, you're ideally looking to be a tank and a stun person for your team overall. Those are your two primary strengths as Skarner, is the shield and the stuns and the suppress, so you really want to focus your build in on that. The reason I also get a Triforce in solo queue is because sometimes you can't rely on your team super heavily, so you'll want to have to do some stuff on your own, and Triforce gives you significant damage to deal with people while you try to get your team to help you. Or if you're in a solo 1v1 scenario, you can usually win some trades in your Spire. Now, the high elo build is if you have a very coordinated team, everyone knows their role, you all know what you're doing, and you can focus 100% on just being a stun person and a tank person and someone who catches people out with your ultimate, and that's just going full tank. You see this build in LCS all the time, and in other pro play, you just build full tank, Cinderhawk, Deadman's Plate, whatever tank item you need, and focus on stunning people up. But for this game, I really need to carry, so I decided to go. The Snowbally build is kind of the equivalent to like a Medjai's build on a mage, so I don't recommend it all the time, but it can be really, really good for snowballing, and it really does help me out in this game. So after I gank Fizz and decide my build path for the game, I try to path up to top lane since it's the only lane I haven't helped yet, and bot lane and mid lane were just freshly dealt with. I go up to top lane. Unfortunately, we're not able to get anything, but my pathing is still very sound. I feel like pathing is a super important thing in the jungle. Two things I do a lot of this game is counter jungling to keep the Echo down and make sure he doesn't get super fed and doesn't pop off like an AP Echo should. And I also focus on having really good pathing to try and have presence in all my lanes because I know I'm fed and I want to solo carry this game. So now that I've ganked all three lanes, I'm in the position where I need to figure out what I'm going to do to try and win this game. So my main goal is going to be shutting down Echo and trying to be there for any counter gank possible, trying to counter jungle him as much as possible, find skirmishes against him as much as possible, and just try and stun him down and kill him, because at this point I can kill pretty much anyone in the game, but I'd want to more focus on Echo just so he isn't influencing other lanes to guarantee them the win, because right now my teammates are pretty weak, and if they get ganked, it's almost a guaranteed kill, so I always just want to stop that from happening. I'm also going to prioritize dragons and try and farm up as fast as possible so I can get to that Triforce and Cinderhulk power spike. If you're fed on Skarner, you kind of are a little bit weak in power while trying to build the Cinderhulk, since it's only tank and you don't really get the full benefit of Cinderhulk until it's super late game and you actually have items to build off the percent bonus health stat. So I'm just trying to focus on getting Triforce, getting Cinderhulk, securing dragons, and stopping Echo and fucking up his day so he doesn't fuck up my laner's day. And then hopefully later into the game I can switch priorities when Echo is weak enough. Now here we're actually coming up on my first mistake of this game. I think I made 2 major mistakes in this game that didn't cost us that much, and actually in some of them we won the team fights. But they were a mistake nonetheless, and I am going to point them out just so you guys don't do the same or similar things in your ranked games. So I was a little bit overambitious. I knew I was fed. I really wanted to kill, and I saw an opportunity to kill Fizz. I went for it, but I kind of ignored the fact that the bot laners would be there to collapse. And I thought I could kill Fizz fast enough to where that wouldn't be a problem, but Fizz, of course, used his E. It delayed the kill, and I ended up dying. Luckily, my teammates were there to help clean up in a very messy skirmish, and we did end up coming out on top, just barely, but I probably shouldn't have been that aggressive, especially when we are, in general, behind. But, yeah, I feel like if that was any other champion, I could have gone away with it, but still a risky thing nonetheless. And sometimes in games, when you're behind, taking risks is very important, but it's also important to realize what type of risks you can and cannot take. That's kind of more of a nuanced thing that comes with experience. Something I still struggle with to this day, to a certain extent, but of course, I did end up winning the game, so it wasn't too big of a deal, but definitely something to note. Over here in top lane, we just have a simple case of the enemy being retarded and just pushing up with absolutely no backup or vision whatsoever. I have no idea what this Aurelia was doing. This game actually took place in Gold 2 MMR, so I was actually kind of surprised how ignorant she was to push up. So at this point in the game, I'm actually getting pretty annoyed because I noticed that the bot lane is completely shitting the bed. And Varus is a pretty strong champion if he gets super ahead. So I know I'm strong. I decide to flash onto Varus, do my full combo, and guarantee a kill on him, and give it over to Karma. I don't really mind Karma taking the kill, even though she's a support, and I could use the kills, because a big part about carrying in League of Legends now, more than in previous seasons, is that, especially on jungle, and especially on support, you always want to give over as many kills as possible to help boost your teammates up. You can't carry your teammates if they aren't strong enough to contribute. You can still be the most influential person in the game, but by spoon-feeding them kills, you're spreading your influence throughout the other champions and the other players. Even if they're bad, even if they're not going to utilize the kill as well as you will, at a certain point, you getting more kills isn't important. Like, once you have a certain amount of kills and you have a certain sense of momentum in the game, it's not that important for you to get kills anymore. So if you can give a kill at any point, I always highly encourage you to, especially if you're a jungler, especially if you're a support, because it can actually help you carry easier even if the enemy sucks dick. So for the next few minutes, nothing super remarkable happens. Here we just have the enemy out-rotating us because nobody's here to respond except for me. I tried to respond after killing Echo with my Sheen E-Burst, which actually does a lot of damage, so definitely get an early Sheen on Skarner because it is so powerful if you're ahead and you have enough gold for it. But anyways, I tried to defend this tower. This is the second major mistake I've made in the game, is trying to defend a tower 1v3. Very bad. Sometimes it feels bad to just let the tower die, but it feels even worse to let the tower die and let yourself die along with it. Luckily, the enemy was kind of stupid and overstayed, so we were able to get a couple more kills, but overall, a win for the enemy team, even though I did end up killing Echo. So as laning phase is stopping and we're getting into the team fight phase of the game, I am willingly going into these scrappy skirmishes to try and get a lead for our team, because I know I'm ahead. I just finished my Trinity Force, super big power spike on Skarner, so I willingly go mid lane to start a 3v3. And I assume that the Vayne will be smart enough to eventually move from bot into mid lane and pick up the scraps, or if she's even smarter, come early enough to be a major part of the fight. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't happen at all. Aurelia TPs, and we end up losing the trade because Fizz has much more burst than I'm expecting. Luckily, we're able to get some good damage onto them from the tower and Nasus because they are just foolishly taking tower aggro. If Vayne roamed up to mid at any time, we would have had everybody dead except for the Varus. But that ended up not happening, and at this point in the game, I know that my Vayne is pretty retarded, and even though she's a super late game scaling champion along with Nasus, I realize that I can't really funnel that many resources into this Vayne because she's not going to capitalize on them. So at this point, I know that I have to be an even stronger carry than I was before, and a lot of weight is put on my shoulders. Quick kill onto the overextended Varus, and we're into the next team fight a couple seconds later. Now, this team fight is super important for you guys to pay attention to because I go in kind of 1v3. I know my teammates are about to back me up, but I kind of go into this 1v3, which looks pretty boosted. I'm able to burst down Echo, but by the time Echo's dead, I'm about under half HP, and I'm versus 2 enemy teammates who are full HP, yet I keep going in. Why? Because I have stuns, and I have tankiness with my shield, so I know I'll be able to stun both of them before I die. Even if I do die, both of them will be stunned, and that will set up my Swain for success. And this is one of the examples of a good death. Now, most of the time in League of Legends, dying is not something you ever want to strive for, right? If you can avoid death, that's always a good thing, but in some scenarios, it's better to stay in the fight, get off the stuns, and die, rather than not get off the stuns and back off and live, because if I were to back off at a reasonable point to where I might have lived, I wouldn't have gotten the stun on Malphite and Aurelia, and Swain might have not gotten the kills, and we might have not gotten the tower because the enemy team might have still been alive. So it's 2 enemy deaths for 1 ally death, and overall it's just so much better for me to die in this scenario. This is the example of a good death. I feel like a lot of people in lower elo make this mistake where they're so afraid of dying, they just always back off if there's a chance of them dying, which is just not good, especially if you're playing a supporty crowd control jungler like Skarner or like a Zac. So right now in the game, we're even on gold. Everybody kind of sucks. We can see that the enemy sucks and is very exploitable, but my team sucks and is very exploitable, and I have a lot of power currently in this moment. So I'm trying to use all this power to influence every part of the map. I'm trying to rush down dragons, I'm trying to get any picks possible so we could finally launch my lead onto the rest of the team and start snowballing towards the win. But this kind of backfires on me because I start a team fight that, if everyone was doing their part, we would have 100% won. But just like last time, Vayne didn't come in time. I was glancing at the minimap real quick during this moment. Keep in mind that I don't really have time to think through this as long as I am talking right now in the video, because this is all like happening very fast in the moment. Obviously, with the luxuries of editing, I can slow everything down and explain my mindset fully, but obviously I'm gonna make some mistakes just by the nature of how fast this game is and how fast I can think about everything going on at once. I glance at the minimap, I see Vayne is nearby, I'm like, okay, everybody's nearby, I have a catch, let's go in and fuck everybody up. Unfortunately, Vayne can't follow up, and they win the team fight, and this is the point in the game where I start sweating bullets. I'm like, holy shit, we are actually going to lose this game. This game where I'm doing so great individually, and I'm trying my best to launch our team to victory, we're just gonna lose, and holy shit. So I start playing with the mindset that we're gonna lose, which actually motivates me to play better and actually try and make less mistakes and be very thoughtful about what I'm doing and try to keep in mind that my teammates suck and the enemy sucks and trying to exploit that. I'm just gonna cut around a bit here to speed up this whole process. I'm just gonna show you some clips of me being proactive throughout the game based off stuff I've said previously. This Aurelia kill is actually pretty interesting because it was very risky for me. I didn't have Fog of War. I didn't know where any of the teammates were. I knew I was powerful enough to chase her down and kill her, so I took the risk of chasing her all the way through my river into the enemy jungle just to kill her, even though there was a big chance of the enemy collapsing on me. Luckily, they weren't there to collapse on this Aurelia. If this was higher elo, it probably would have been a stupid mistake for me to do that because the enemy would have collapsed, but luckily they didn't. I took a risk and I ended up being rewarded for it, which helped me snowball further. Over here we have a team fight where I have another good death, going in outnumbered, but using my strength to basically be the equivalent of 2 champions, but then end up dying for it, helping my swing get ahead, always good. And then over here, unfortunately, we have Nasus pushing up too far, and just the classic mistake that every top laner should avoid, pushing up and dying. Don't split push if you can't. Know when to back off. He dies here, and it greatly influences the next team fight, which I end up starting by catching out Echo over here. And I do end up killing 2 people before I die, so another example kind of a good death. But I did, unfortunately, again, expect my Vayne to follow up. She didn't. Again, my mistake. 3rd time's the charm. Probably won't happen again in this game. And the game is still falling into the enemy's favor. Now right here we have my final major mistake of the game, and if you look at this footage just casually with no information at all, this looks extremely boosted, but I think this is actually the classic example of having the wrong mindset for the wrong elo. Now, in my opinion, I think this right here would have been the best decision if I had teammates of like platinum or diamond caliber, but obviously I was in low to mid gold elo, and the ally team is not going to be as proactive as me. Now, before I get into this, let me just explain my overall thought process to why I ended up doing this. So, we're looking to do dragon soon. The enemy is all clumped up in mid lane, and we're all clumped up in the river, basically all grouped up. Vayne is just about to come, but yeah, we're basically all grouped. So pausing the game right here, you can clearly see that we are all together, ready to collapse onto anything. All just together in the exact same place at this time. I know we're powerful enough to win a 5v5 team fight. Over here, I see that they're all clumped up. We know exactly where everybody is, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to contest Dragon, win a team fight, and start snowballing the game into our favor, especially since I am very strong and I can pick off their most fed enemy right now with my ultimate, either Varus or Fizz. So even though I'm there before my team, I realize that they are able to still follow up in time if they go around the upper part of the river. But for some reason, they decide to go the long way because their brain lags and they don't realize what's going on. I'm spamming assist, and they just don't go in. It's just looking at this is pretty frustrating because obviously it could have turned into a really good team fight to snowball the game into our favor. And we did end up winning the game, but could have been so much easier. This could have been the point where we just end up winning. And this decision by me looks really stupid when you consider what my ally team was doing, but obviously there's no voice chat yet, and we didn't have proper coordination, I guess. I tried my best with pinging, but I always feel like you should make the proactive play to do this type of stuff. But you gotta always keep in mind what elo you're in. I knew everybody was bad, but I was just super eager to win. I just did this anyways because I knew it was the right decision. And it is the right decision, but just not with these teammates, which is sometimes super hard to judge, especially when you have these instincts from playing in a higher elo. For a majority of last season, I was plat. I had pretty unlucky placements. I did kind of fuck up my placements majorly by spamming Urgot and just sucking big dick. If you're a lower elo player, you might see a diamond player or a plat player in your normals game fucking up just because they don't know what their champion does, or maybe they do play that champion, but they just fail because League is a super reactionary game and a predictive game. To be very good at League, you need to predict the enemy. The reason wards are so important in League of Legends is because it helps you predict the enemy, and predicting the enemy is how you win a game in League of Legends. But in lower elo, you also have to predict the ally. And if you have a sudden change in elo in your game, like for example, you're playing some diamond Skarner games and then you start playing some silver Skarner games, you're still a diamond level Skarner, but you might fuck up a bit in cases like this because you have to also predict your allies, which you're not used to doing because your allies usually act a certain way based off their rank and their general skill, and there's just some like unspoken rules that you kind of know about League of Legends at that point that lower elo people don't know because they just haven't played long enough, or they haven't been proactive in trying to learn like what to do in League of Legends, which is why I'm making this video, to help you guys to know these scenarios and to not be like these people. This would have been the right decision on my part. Speaking to people who are gonna play Skarner and are going to be in the same position as me, maybe you don't want to do this. Maybe you think in the back of your head, you should do this, but you just won't because you gotta be aware of your allies. So this is a mistake you can also learn from. But also, this is a mistake that you other people can learn from that are in the opposite scenario of someone trying to engage, that maybe you should trust what they're doing, especially if they're higher rank. So yeah, it's kind of a complicated issue, but hopefully you guys can learn from this. Here we just see the aftermath of that last fight. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, there was a surrender vote. Luckily, 3 people did say no. If only one person said no, being me, and the game ended there, I would have been so pissed off because this is very winnable, and we obviously do end up winning. But anyways, Karma dies here and they just start pushing in. Luckily, we are able to respawn and fight them to push them out of our base, because again, we actually can contest them 5v5, as I said previously, which is why I tried to engage the previous fight. Now over here, I actually have to give huge props to this Nasus. He makes the proactive play to flash, slow, and kill Malphite. Right now, I think Malphite is probably the weakest person on the enemy team. Support Malphite, maybe not the best pick in the world. We can definitely exploit that, so I'm super happy that he actually made the proactive play to flash and secure that kill, especially since we're in a very volatile state of the game. And then our lead is further pressed when something actually super funny happens. Echo's second part of his E goes off on Karma the second she flashes over the wall. So he ends up being trapped in Baron Pit, and we actually end up getting the kill onto Echo, which was pretty hilarious. And now that we got those much needed picks onto Echo and Malphite, we are able to push our lead into a tower dive and kill Fizz and Varus, which were much needed targets to kill. Unfortunately, some of my teammates die because they overextend. I know I can go in because of my tankiness and my damage to secure the Fizz. My teammates kind of just want to get the last hit. They die. Not really too much of a big deal. And from here on out, it's just a bunch of scrappy fights until we end up getting a huge advantage later on and winning. I've basically said everything I've wanted to say in this video for all the major points and all the major stuff you can do in this game. I'm going to go through the rest of the game relatively quickly and show you guys how I ended up carrying. Now right here I actually do kind of overstay after picking off Malphite because we don't have any wards, so I don't know exactly when the enemy team is going to collapse, and I kind of just take a guess at how long it's going to take them to collapse. My guess is a little off. They come too early and I end up dying with Nasus. Not too bad for the team overall, as you'll see later in the footage. But this also brings up a point I want to talk about. I did make quite a few mistakes in this game, and based off how I framed this video and how I've talked about everything, you might think that I wasn't really solo carrying, when I guess in the very technical term I wasn't, because I did end up relying on my teammates a bit. But I did make this video and talk about this video in a way that showcases and highlights my mistakes in this game as well as my successes, so you guys can take my mistakes, take my successes, and learn from them. If I were to list off all the mistakes my teammates made, we'd be here for hours on end, and it would just feel like a bitch fest. And any successful plays my team did end up making into the late game was because I was able to support them throughout the mid and early game. I was basically the backbone for this entire team, so in my opinion, I basically solo carried them. But let's just quickly rewind and rewatch in slow motion the last clip that was just on screen of that last team fight, because this was the team fight that won us the game, and it was a bit of a perfect storm. If you ever need to advocate for never surrender in ranked, this would be the clip to show someone to make that point, because Malphite solo carried this team fight. So I'm trying to make a pick with my E. I miss. Oh fuck. Varus catches me out. I'm spamming flash. I'm like, I need to get the fuck out of here. This is so bad. After I flash, Malphite ults into me. We collapse on this Malphite, kill him. Meanwhile, Nasus is doing the perfect job of just keeping everybody at bay so we can deal with them after the Malphite. Malphite is dead. Everybody else dies. We win the team fight. If this team fight went any other way, I think the enemy would have just won the fight and won the game. But luckily, with the help from Nasus and Malphite, the team was split up and we were able to pick them off in a very dominant fashion. Now, this also gets into another thing. If you're in a lower rank and you feel like you don't deserve this rank and you're better than everyone else, you are. You are better than everyone else. So, that means you're better than the enemy team. And just think about the stupid mistakes the enemy team will make based off of your actions. I put myself in a vulnerable position trying to get a pick because I knew we had the 5v4 advantage. After I got caught in the Varus ult, I used my flash to bait a 4v5 engage, which the Malphite took, and that ended up winning the fight. Enemies are stupid. Even if the enemy's ahead, that doesn't make them smart. They are still dumb even if they have the advantage. You gotta utilize that and play mind games with them to try and bait engages and help win the overall fight. As we speed up the footage here, you can see that we're going for the mid lane inhib. We do end up getting it, but it does cost us a couple people. That gives them a chance to run it down mid and end the game now that Swain and Vayne are dead for so long and they have 5 and we have 3. But they luckily give up their last opportunity to end the game and decide to go for Baron instead, even though they had a wave pushing into mid and they could have just ended. By the time they get to Baron, the rest of us respawn and we are able to collapse. So to start off this fight, Varus wastes ult on me. During the time I was rooted, I would have been waiting for my teammates to catch up anyway, so it was basically irrelevant. It actually helped me not int, in a way. My teammates come in, I suppress Echo because I know he has Smite, that forces them off Baron, and then I go to focus down Aurelia to make sure Nasus doesn't die. I leave Fizz to his own devices, and hope that Swain, Karma, and Vayne can all deal with him. Luckily, he doesn't do too much damage before we end up winning the entire team fight, and we're able to pick him off, but he is unfortunately able to get Karma. That doesn't really matter in the long run, though. We get Baron, and their team's hopes are crushed forever. So now that we've got Baron and mid inhib is already down, I look to push down bot lane tower and hopefully get the bot lane inhib. Unfortunately, my team is not on the same page as me and they're still roaming around mid despite us still having the inhib tower. I feel like this is a problem in lower elos, but luckily I do notice some time and I start running down mid and I feel like I got there just in the nick of time to turn the fight around. I probably should have started roaming down there earlier, so I guess it's a minor mistake on my part, but I do think the whole team should have just been bought anyways with maybe a couple people to defend the inhib. Regardless, we win the fight. We end up getting bought even though a couple of us die. We respawn, we win the next few fights, and we just grind out the rest of the game. At this point, I am full build, so I can basically win almost every skirmish. This final build on Skarner is extremely strong, as you can see with the footage coming at you right now, even though it is sped up. I will have a full gameplay commentary version of this in the description. That's uploaded onto my other channel. You may be thinking, hey, this is a gameplay commentary, but I actually did an original preliminary commentary on this right after I finished the game, giving my raw thoughts to actually help give me a light script for this video, and also just to have my fresh thoughts out from the game so I can remember what I was thinking in the game when I actually do end up making this video. So that will be in the description if you do want to see the full gameplay footage and to hear my full unfiltered thoughts. That might be a bit biased towards how I was feeling after that game, but regardless, we win the game, and it was pretty intense. So as we look at these stats on screen right now, which are also linked in the description for you to look at your leisure, I will give you a quick summary of what I did in this game to win, because it might not be obvious after the 30-minute in-depth ramble. Just if you need a quick summary, I basically won through team control and map control. I was trying to set up my teammates for success throughout the entire game, adapting to their flaws and their play patterns that were not super favorable. Sometimes I misjudged, as you saw with that dragon fight where I died 1v5, but overall, my goals were basically to stay fed, make sure the echo never popped off because I had control of counter jungling. I tried to control all the objectives, and I also tried to make sure that whenever possible I was able to give my teammates kills to help them get ahead even though they weren't very good. And overall, I was just trying to balance all these levers of counter jungling, objective, focus, and then also ganking to get free kills for myself. And then once I'm powerful enough on my own, transferring that power to the team throughout the mid and late game. And of course, making the typical decisions you would late game with objectives like proper times to go for Baron, proper times to push certain lanes, as you saw throughout the video. And yeah, that's basically all I did. A lot to do, but it is possible, especially when Skarner is such a strong champion and you know the champion by heart. Which, to be fair, isn't very hard to do since Skarner is luckily a very simple champion, so mechanically, you can figure that out on your own, but then macro-wise, you can use this video as a great example to climb at least gold and silver elo. Hopefully, you can take the fundamentals of what I said and apply it to get even further than I am right now. Hard stuck plat, by the way, but anyways, if you found this informative, please be sure to share it with your friends so they can also know how to improve in League of Legends. If you'd like me to make more videos along these lines, please tell me, give me any constructive criticism. I would greatly appreciate it. This did take a long time to make, but I definitely think it was worth it, and it was a unique kind of format that I am testing out, although it might not be the most viewer-friendly thing in the world. So if you do have any criticism, please put it in the comments, and I will try to apply it to my future videos whenever I can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye.